This is my pleasure to welcome Howard Holton today, the CEO of GigaOm, although we'll learn more in a few minutes, to our podcast, Master AI Disruption. So Howard is a master at AI and cybersecurity and turning organizations into what they would never thought they would be through AI transformation. So without much ado, welcome, Howard. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, Francis. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. So let's start with the latest news. Okay, so you are actually leaving this tenure at GigaOm. How long were you there for?
So I've been at GigaOm. I started as a contractor about 5 years ago, a little bit more, 5.5 years ago, to really kind of help up level the job that GigaOm was doing and really, take it from like five guys in a garage, I always say, to a professional organization, right? Build process, build culture, really try to formalize and help build it for a growth engine. I took over as CEO last September, where
Mm.
my goal was to transform the work that GigaOm did into an AI platform, right? From kind of one-off content. If you think of a traditional newspaper as an example, you have a bunch of writers writing individual articles. Those articles then get published on GigaOm's website. I transformed that and built an AI first data platform that gave consistency, coherence, definability, and defensibility to the work that GigaOm did, right? So it stopped being articles by individuals and rather a corpus of knowledge and a corpus of data that GigaOm would then take to market. We launched that at the middle of last month. That successfully moved into production in the beginning of June. And at that point, I determined it's time for me to move on to my next adventure.
Which is called Feronia. So tell us about Feronia. It's a Greek
Yeah,
name.
which comes from a Greek root that means the understanding that comes from experience, and it really is in today's day and age. It's to define the difference that humans make versus AI. AI is
Mhm.
an amazingly knowledgeable thing. It has
Mhm.
all of the information of the world contained within it, but it doesn't have the experience to know what is useful and what is not, to know the difference between good information and bad information, as it
Mhm.
were, right? And
Mhm.
that's really where humans and human expertise comes into play, and that's where the
Mhm.
name comes from.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
we're going to lean into that at Feronia as an analyst and advisory firm, really focusing on helping people both manage kind of cybersecurity and the rest of GRCS, governance, risk, compliance, and security in an AI world. And then how do you go from AI is a really neat idea, and we've run a few little demo projects to rolling that into production? Well, you need a strategy and a strategic plan. It's almost
Mm.
impossible for one person to be a good
Mhm.
consultant because consultants actually roll things out. They actually deploy technology, right? What most companies need is an advisor that can help them make sure they're making the right decisions, that they have a good strategy, and that they're capable of not only delivering, but executing on what's delivered, and that those things align back to the business goals. And that's really what Feronia is all about.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I love this notion of good information, or let's say data and relevant data. Okay, wonderful. So you've done a lot, obviously in this field. So you talked a lot about team adoption. Okay, of AI. So putting the AI solution directly into their hands rather than training in a traditional way. That's what I recall from our conversation. That really led me to ask you, could you explain more about this philosophy behind this and how it helped overcome initial resistance, which we see a lot, and foster a better together mindset, at companies you worked for in the past.
Sure, sure. I think in an AI world, this is even more important than it was previously. But my rule has always been kind of an agile mindset, long before that became even a concept, right? The biggest challenge we have as technologists is we are fascinated by the thing we built. Why we
Mm,
built it, right? We're super
mhm,
excited, we're intrigued, we're proud of this thing we built. The downside is we also tend to want to make it perfect before we share it, right? And so what history has shown me is people are naturally fearful of change. It is a
mhm.
completely human reaction,
Absolutely.
right? It's getting colder. We need to take a different action. That action is we need to stock up with food. We need to make sure that we've got a constant source of heat and fire. Game and plants and agriculture is going to become scarce. We need to batten down the hatches for the winter. No matter how far back you go or how far forward you go in human history, we're all fearful of change. Well, that fear isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does exist. And when it comes to teams, the best thing that you can do is start by explaining what the purpose is to what you're doing. Why are we using AI? What are we hoping to get out of it? What is the purpose and the point? And why does this have a place that humans cannot fill or should not fill at the moment? Right? The problem is all of that is massive change, and all of that, especially in the current climate, comes along with an awful lot of fear. right? Fear of who I am, fear of my job, fear of what I'll do. And I encountered exactly the same thing. And I encountered it no matter how experienced, no matter how senior the person was that I was working with, they all had some level of fear and some level of conflict. And what I have found, just like in the past, as soon as I put the tool in the hands of the user, it immediately changed, right? Not that the fear went away. That's not what I mean. But what changed was it went from this thing is theoretical and thus all of my fears are potentially true, right? It's like Schrodinger's fear. It's both real and fake at the same time. To, okay, well, this isn't actually real. This isn't actually real. This isn't actually real. Now there's something here that I can interact with. Now there's something I can see, which means I can measure it, which means I can overcome it, which means
Mm,
I can understand it, right? So the faster you get it in the hands of your users, the faster that fear turns into a challenge, which
mhm,
turns into an understanding that then becomes overcoming. The other really good thing is the faster you get it to your users, the faster they tell you what you did right and the faster they tell you what you did wrong, right? And as soon as you know what you did wrong, you can immediately start working on fixing it. And the improvement in the platform or the tool or the solution or the
mhm,
AI goes through the roof. And you start to
mhm,
really identify like, am I on the
mhm,
right track? Was I doing the right thing? How are the users actually going to use this? Because as designers and developers, we're not the users. We're not the customer ever,
mm,
right? Someone else is the customer. If you only build a tool that you're going to use, that's great, but it's not going to get any further,
mhm,
right?
mhm. So you also emphasize another interesting thought. You said you've emphasized that the trick with data science and AI isn't just the data or the science, but it's about asking the right question. So how do you instill this insight-driven kind of mindset, questioning approach with Giga Home in the past, especially as you were scaling? And how do you ensure you're delivering true value rather than just information in your future endeavors and clients?
Sure. So there's a couple things that I do. Kind of philosophically, the place that I say you always have to start with the why.
Mhm,
Why are we doing it? And why did we do it in the past? And why do
mhm,
we think that's the right solution?
mhm,
Right? If you start with why, and it can be, why are we here, even as a kind of foundational piece, right? You'll end up in a much better place because it's not about the what or the how. The what or the how isn't the important part. The important part is the why, right? So why are we doing this? And if it's replacing an existing system, why did we do this in the past? And then always, why do we think this is the right choice? And
mhm,
what I find is interesting is when you stumble over that, right? Why are we doing this? Well, we need to have a better understanding of our sales data. Great, right? What comes out of that is the next question, which goes from a broad question, why is always a broad question, to a very, very detailed one. Cool. Define sale for me. What I found in the past, I did a lot of data science workshops. And what I found in almost every instance is if I put six different people from six different departments, right? I've got sales, I've got finance, I've got production, I've got shipping, and I've got service in the same room. And I go, define a sale for me. If I have
mm,
six different departments, I will get six different
mhm,
answers,
mm,
right? Finance counts it as a sale when the money's received. Shipping counts it when it leaves the dock. Production counts it when an order that has been placed is produced. Sales counts it when the SOW is signed or the PO is signed or the agreement is signed, right? None of those are a sale because they can't be. You can't have six different definitions for a sale, right? And so that goes back to you have to get the question right, right? If all we did was ask an AI, fed it all of our data, and said, how many sales do I have? It would give you 100% the wrong answer because you didn't define what a sale was, and
mm,
there's no way for it to know what a sale is,
yeah.
right? And that seems to be true in nearly everything we do, right? Additionally, we talk in code in our organizations,
Mm,
right? This is something that I found. So GigaOm produces a report called the Radar. The Radar is like a Gartner Magic Quadrant, right? We're scoring vendor products in a particular market against
mhm,
everyone else in the market, right? We talk about those as vendors, the vendor that appears on the report. But in fact, no vendor appears on the report because it's their product that appears. We just
mhm,
report it as a vendor, right? So instead
mhm,
of saying, Hitachi's VSP storage array, we just say Hitachi. But what we're really talking about is the VSP storage array when we're measuring storage, or the content platform when we're measuring object storage, right? The problem is when you talk to an AI using that language, if the AI doesn't understand that language, it's going to go down a path that is very, very, very wrong. The
mhm,
exact same way, someone who's never heard you talk that way started on their very first day with your company and went,
mm,
I don't understand what you guys are saying. I mean, I'm going to fake it because I'm new and I don't want to reveal that I don't know things. But the reality is, as a new employee, I haven't got a clue what you guys are talking about. You might as well be speaking Greek. And it really comes back to you have to ask the right question and you have to provide the right context and the right understanding.
yeah.
And everyone involved must agree.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Understood. Yep, yep, yep. So you've worked in lots of different industries. What are some of the common cultural organizational obstacles that you anticipate, at your clients when you step in the door?
There's actually quite a few. You'd be surprised how many times I talk at companies and I'm working with executives, and it doesn't really matter what the size of the company is or what the industry is. And I ask questions related to, okay, so what is your differentiator as a company? What differentiates you from your competitors, right? There was an exercise I did with a customer where this was a workshop specifically to help define that so that they had a direction to go so I could help them better understand how that differentiation appealed to their customer. I know their customer really well because I was that customer. And so in preparation, they wrote like 36 different differentiators on the wall on their whiteboard. They're
Hmm.
very proud of it. Right up until the point where I said, okay, are you guys ready for me to address these? And I took up a whiteboard marker and I literally went, nope, 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 nope. Guys, there's three things left on out of 36 that I'm going to ask you about. 33 I've already heard of from every one of your competitors, right? You can't be differentiated if it's the same thing your competitors say. So let's
Hmm.
talk about the three things. When it was all said and done, there was one that was interesting. The other two were just rewordings of what others have said.
I get it. I get it. So
Right.
that's one differentiation. So what would be another one that you often come across?
The lack of communication, the lack of a lexicon, right?
Mm.
Everyone starts talking about things, but they don't define them.
Mm.
So here's one that's super common. I work with a lot of sales organizations and I talk to them about their customers. What's really interesting is I use the term green money and brown money because as a budget holder, I only have two places to put my dollars. The first
Mhm.
is brown money, which is keep the lights on. It's someplace I've already committed dollars to. It doesn't matter whether I've committed dollars to an invoice, like there's an invoice to it, or like I have brown money committed to office furniture, as an example. There's
Mm.
always a line item expense for office furniture in every company that has an office, obviously, right? It doesn't matter the age of it. It doesn't matter if I'm planning on replacing it. The fact is, those dollars are committed to office furniture. That's brown money, right? In technology, right? Let's say you want to sell me, let's say you want to sell me a new endpoint protection. If I've already got endpoint protection, that's a brown money conversation, right? Makes logical sense. It's reasonable, right? We at home, we have brown money expenses. We have a car. Unless you live in New York or someplace with really good public transportation, and you're like, I don't own a car. Cool, but what happens then if you're going to move to a location that does?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? Well, that becomes a green money conversation. That's a new acquisition, not a replacement. Those are the only two things I have. I have brown money and I have green money.
Mhm.
I don't really care how you define it. The number of times that an organization is familiar with either of those terms as a way of thinking rounds to zero.
What's that, sorry?
It rounds to zero. It rounds down to zero. It is
Huh.
very, very, very seldom that people think about it that way.
I see.
When we're talking about decision making, most people don't consider where they are on the decision making matrix and what their actual role is in decision making, right? People call themselves a decision maker, and then you say, okay, cool. So, how much budgetary control do you have?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have any budgetary control. Then you're not actually a decision maker, right? You're an influencer, you're an advisor, but you don't have any, but you're not a decision maker. You don't
Mm.
have any actual responsibility for the budget, and therefore
Mhm.
you're not a budget holder. And what's shocking is the number of times that comes up, right? The number of times people don't really truly understand their role. And
Mhm.
here's where it gets really interesting. In an AI world, I'm sitting at Gartner a year ago, and Gartner at their IT symposium, and they're going over their predictions for the next 10 years. And one of their predictions, and I think it was like number 7, is that middle management will go away, be replaced by AI. And I started to laugh. I literally laughed in the room. I'm in the keynote, and I'm literally laughing because the only way you can do that is if you don't understand the purpose of middle management, right? In your average enterprise, and these are US Department of Labor statistics, 48 of employees in an enterprise are management. 48%. Why
Oh.
is that?
Yeah.
But when we study organizational psychology and culture, what we find is you can only lead between 10 and 20 people before any more than 20, you're not effective as a leader anymore,
Sure.
right? So middle management is created to lead people. Well, here's the problem. Ask your average middle manager how much time they spend leading people, and you're going to understand why Gartner can put that statistic on the board, right? So, what is your purpose? For those who watch Rick and Morty, right? My purpose is to spread butter. What is your purpose? If you don't actually understand the purpose and the value that you bring to an organization,
Very difficult. Yeah.
right? You're going to be lost. You're going to be left behind. You're going to be in deep, deep trouble. And
Mm.
now is the time to actually determine that. Now is the time to gain a better understanding of that. And
Mhm.
that's really what I help organizations do,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What is your purpose? What is the purpose of the people that work for you? What is the purpose of the people that you work for? And
Mhm.
how do you best align to serve the mission of the company?
Mhm.
That's really what we all should all be set out to be.
Mm.
Sorry, to do.
Okay. So then my next question for you. So those are big things, like very structural things in the ability of any organization to move forward, this transformation. So your daily calls during the heaviest development phase of the companies that you worked for, with live changes, open Q&A, foster transparency, right? So what were some of the biggest aha moments or unexpected challenges that emerged from this highly collaborative approach to AI development and deployment that you foster?
The biggest one was how much I had wrong, right? Going through development, I still had to get the platform to the point where I could turn it over to the users,
Mm.
right? And in doing so, I'm not a user. Like I said, right? I'm the developer. I deliver a bunch of content for GigaOm. None of it is a radar, which is what I built the platform to deliver, right? And so the number of things that I got wrong in just how the analysts thought about how they worked on it, the things that were important and critical to them versus the things that were important and critical to me, and the things I thought were important and
Mhm.
critical to them.
Mhm.
Like if you had made that, that Venn diagram would be small. You know what I mean? In the number of times I got it right, I should say, right?
Mhm.
It would be small. And that really probably was the biggest kind of change. The downside to that is it made more work for me. The
Mhm.
upside to that though is it also made the adoption that much better. I
Mhm.
wasn't worried about getting it all right. I really wasn't. I was worried about can I defend it and define it so that when my users came to me and said, "Hey, this is what I think," we could actually have a discussion about it. Right? If I can define it and I can defend it, it does not mean I'm right. It just means
Mhm.
I can explain
Mhm.
what I did, why I did it, my thought process. So when they came to me with a new idea, I didn't have to be defensible. I
Mhm.
didn't have to be defensive. I just needed to go, there's some thought behind this. And then they went, okay, cool. Well, you thought about it. Here's how I think about it. And then we could meet somewhere and go, oh, you have a better thought than I did. And it doesn't matter which side that came from because there's no ego at that point. I made the decision based on the best information I had at the time. Now I have new information, new decision time. This is fantastic. And the number of improvements, I want to say within the first 2 weeks, I had 1,900 PRs committed.
What's that? Sorry, say it again.
1,900 product revisions
Okay, got it.
in the first 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm not talking a user base of 100 people. I'm talking a user base of 20, 25.
Really? But that was,
Seriously.
that's like 500, no, 50, no, I mean, that's like, you had 20, like 2000. Now you had, so like 100 per person.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was fantastic. The
Of course.
improvement that I had at the end of that period was
Very,
was outstanding.
yeah. Yeah. So moving on with Feronia now. So what's your plan to impart this on companies? Are you going to look for partners? Are you looking for like a fractional role somewhere, or what's the plan?
I mean, you kind of nailed it. It's kind of all of the above, right? What I do really well are the things that I've done at GigaOm. I don't really have any interest in competitive reports. I think competition is problematic rather than helps to move us forward in the way analysts kind of refer to it. So really, I'm going to look at helping vendors be better and helping enterprises better understand how
Mm.
not to make critical mistakes in this industry. One of the things that I see over and over and over again is cost overrun in AI models,
Say it
right?
again. So,
Cost overrun in
no,
AI
Sabo.
models, right?
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
seeing an awful
Of
lot of
course,
that.
of course, of course.
So in April, my cost was roughly 10x what it ended up being when I rolled out into production at the end of May and beginning of June with no reduction in quality whatsoever, right? The fact is, we're still in a position where the fundamentals matter. And that's really the goal, right? How do we address the fundamentals and better understand our customers? So when we put the two things together, we deliver what we say we want, when we say we want, to the level we want at a price that everyone can stomach,
Hmm.
right? And so really that's my goal is to help companies better understand that. Some of that I'll take on as fractional work, right? For those that need a little more long-term commitment and really need to move from whatever phase they are to a higher level of maturity on the kind of professionalism and scalability scale, right? Some will be workshop based, and some will likely be somewhere in between, right? A quarterly meeting. But again, I'm not a consultant, so once I help a customer determine what does their kind of roadmap look like, right? What does that strategic plan look like?
Hmm.
Then the next determination is what does the kind of build, borrow, buy matrix look like,
Hmm.
right? Do I have the skills to build it internally? Do I borrow the skills from someone else? Or do
Hmm.
I acquire it wholesale as a standalone, right? The build, buy, borrow matrix. And so for that, I'll be looking for partners that can execute, and I'll be looking at expanding my network kind of all directions to make sure that I'm fulfilled and my customers get everything that they could possibly need from any engagement with me.
Hmm.
But I'm a big fan. My goal is always to make any dollars spent with me the stuff you never think about. I want to be the line item you never think about. The value is so high, the confidence that you get is so high, you never
Hmm.
think about, do we spend that again?
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Okay. So I give you a magic wand. What will be the future like in the next week?
Ooh, so the future in the next week?
I mean, like the first week of July when you are
Sure.
at the helm
Uh,
at the helm of Feronia.
Feronia is stood up. Feronia.co, which is the website, is stood up. I'm able to take orders. I'm working with my first client, and I've got my first 20, 25 pieces of content already published.
Okay, tell us about this new client, what it's like.
So it's likely going to be someone in the tech vendor space looking to better understand their customers in the way that I typically take that. Really looking at how do we align their new go to market in the language that resonates with their buyer, right? The CIO, the CTO, or the CISO, which are three very, very different personalities.
Sure.
And most of these vendors, they're really, really good at selling to a champion, right? They get someone who's going to be at the keyboard, right? They get the engineer really comfortable with their solution. It meets all the technical requirements, and then the deal immediately stalls. And it
Mm,
stalls the second it leaves that office because that person has to take it to someone closer to the buyer, which could be two or three or four steps away from them, and
mm,
convince them that this is where the company needs to invest some money, right? My solution is instead, let's talk about how you arm that champion or how you co-present with that champion at the level of that buyer. How do you speak like a CIO, CTO, or CISO in the language they need to hear so they can make decisions quicker,
mm,
right? My goal and the whole reason I became an analyst was I wanted to shorten the enterprise sales cycle. Enterprise sales cycles are 9 to 18 months,
mhm.
right? I hate that. I've always hated that as a buyer. I've always hated that as a leader. Why does it take so long to make decisions? Well, it takes so long to make decisions because I don't get any of the information that I need from the sales team or from the sales team's champion, right? My person that they've made a champion.
And
My goal is to change that
why don't you get it from the sales team?
because they don't understand how to talk my language. They come into my office and they say, Howard, we're not going to talk speeds and feeds. And they're right. They talk feeds and speeds. They just flip
But
it. Exactly the
but
same conversation. I go, guys, I don't care about any of those things, right? How is this going to help me achieve the objective that's set for me by the company, which
mhm,
has nothing to do with statistics on performance,
mm,
has nothing to do with who you outperform. I don't care that your stuff is faster. I don't really care that it's cheaper. Cheaper only matters if it fits my budget or not. How
mhm,
does it help me achieve the goals set by my business? That's where it becomes really important, right? And do you understand the things that I do on a daily basis to get business done, right? Do you make my people more effective and more efficient? Okay, I'm listening. Because you know what I've never had a fellow CIO tell me? That they
mhm,
have
what?
enough people to do the job. Never. I've never had one go, actually, I've got like 12 extra people on my team.
Mm,
That has never happened. I've never worked with someone that has extra people, right? So instead, okay, how do I leverage my people to do a job that's smarter, that provides better outcomes for my business? Now I'm listening, right?
yeah,
How do I get the job done with the resources I'm provided and have to and stop this constant fight to do more with less? Okay,
mhm.
now I'm listening, right?
Well, it's clear that you have had a lot of experiences and a lot of reflections about the experience that you had, and that you come with a lot of solutions and determination to help your future either clients or home, where you're going to be another CEO of success, like you were for GigaHome. So I can only wish you great success with Feronia, and why not like reconvening in 1 year, to see where you're at and what has been cooking for you.
That'd be great. That'd be great. I'd love to get back together in a year and tell you all about my new team.
Okay, wonderful. And we're good with Teams, so maybe we'll reconvene before that. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Howard. I really appreciate it. Thank you.